Oh, this is gonna be crazy. That was great. Alright, hello everyone and welcome today to another episode of SpraynPray1000's Verdict, starring me, SpraynPray1000, as I review some of the games that I play on my channel that have recently been released. So, today's episode is going to focus on, surprisingly, another prequel to a well-established franchise from these past couple of years. Today we are going to focus on Gears of War Judgment in a similar vein to God of War Ascension, okay? And in fact, I've at several points jokingly referenced this sort of juxtaposition of these two games as the battle of the GOWs, and that in March we would really know what GOW standed for, or well, now stands for. Basically, what is Gears of War Judgment? Gears of War Judgment is a prequel to the entirety of the Gears of War franchise, in that all the events of previous games have not occurred as of, you know, when the game starts and what actually happens. So, for the main campaign, the game, well, there's actually two campaigns I should, elaborate on. The game has two different campaigns, one of which is the actual Judgment campaign, and the other of which is actually a different campaign set during a part of Gears of War 3 that they decided to elaborate on. That apparently, I guess they said that, they kind of tied that in with Gears 3. I don't know. I haven't played the campaign in Gears 3 in over a year, so I can't, really be a good source for that. So, what did I think about the campaign storyline? I thought that, it was interesting the way that they sort of wanted to, go back and focus on Baird and Cole rather than Marcus and Dom, who have basically been the series mains for 3 games straight. In this game, the main character is actually Baird, who was more of a supporting character in other Gears of War games. Baird and Cole, they were both supporting characters. They decided to make them the main 2 characters, and with, 2 other people to make it 4-player. Now, here's what I didn't like. Okay? What I didn't like about this game's storyline is that they kind of really didn't go too much in depth with all these other people. Especially the other 2 people being Sophia and Paddock, okay? And this also kind of ties in with the game being very short, not having much to it in terms of, storyline. And in fact, sometimes just gameplay is very short and very quick. It's kind of like they introduced these interesting characters who already, are not in the remainder of the franchise. They're new characters made specifically for Judgment. And, you don't really get to learn much about them. Like, yeah, that, from reading, like, the description of the characters and whatever, that, Baird is a lieutenant, and, Cole was a superstar who willingly enlisted, and, Sophia's an Onyx guard. Actually, there's more to her story that I'm not aware of, because, they didn't really give it too much of a go-over in the actual game. And then, Paddock, who's the final guy, and more like, kind of has a Russian accent to him. He's more of a, see, his story's interesting, actually. I was really hoping they would really go into Paddock's story, and they kind of did, but not as much as I liked. Paddock basically is not from the same government as everyone else. Rather, he's from the opposing government when they were having a war prior to the Locust invasion, and as part of, like, some integration program, he is able to now enlist in the COG army. And, some of the tensions run high between them because obviously he was, their enemy up until when the Locust invaded. And, that kind of changed everything. And now they're forced to be allies. So, he's an interesting character. He's very quiet. He doesn't talk much. And just, I wish that they had gone a bit more in depth with what they did with a lot of these characters. Like, they don't really explain, because they say that, oh, Cole is, feeling a lot of pressure, and he's not, he's not sure what's going to happen to him and how this war is going to go, because he used to be a superstar, and he enlisted in the COG army, and he's not sure how he's going to live up to all these expectations. That kind of never appeared in gameplay. All this other stuff, like, Baird is supposed to have a completely different attitude before he becomes an absolute douchebag. That kind of was there, but downplayed a lot. So, like, for character development, they kind of really didn't do, that great of a job, and in my opinion. Now, the second campaign is called Aftermath, and basically what Aftermath is it takes place during a segment of the Gears of War 3 campaign. I don't remember exactly at what point. You'll have to forgive me. It's been a year since I've last played that campaign, and even then we skipped cutscenes because we were just doing it on Insane or something. And all I know is they did split up. They did leave, the main group to go try and find, like, reinforcements and, ships and stuff. And Baird remembers this one place that he went to during Judgment that he says, wow, I need to, that we might find something there. And, here he encounters, Paddock, and, they have another adventure trying to get the boat, so many years later, because, obviously the events of the Gears games have pretty much happened. Gears 1 and Gears 2 have already happened, and now we're on to Gears 3. And it was, again, like, that would have been the perfect time to show off some a little bit more story about Paddock. They did kind of go in depth with the story of Sophia and Paddock, but, again, it's not as much as I wanted, and it's just kind of like, both God of War Ascension and Gears of War Judgment, both prequel games to pretty good franchises, and they kind of downplay, what they could do with the franchise. It's just, in my opinion, it's rather disappointing that they, didn't take this time to really elaborate on this stuff. And so, for the most part, the story, it's passable, it's interesting, but it's not, as gripping as it probably could have been. Now, moving on to the gameplay of it, the gameplay of Gears of War Judgment is, again, like God of War Ascension, very lackluster compared to Gears of War 3 and all the other Gears games. Basically, the gameplay, for the most part, except up until the present day, comes in the form of flashbacks heard during testimony, where Baird and his three other allies, are being interrogated for misusing military weaponry during the war versus the Locust. Now, the gameplay in the flashbacks is, one character's specific testimony as, they recount what happened up until that point and, why they did what they had to do. And, basically the gameplay is standard Gears of War fare. Standard Gears of War fare, but it's different, okay? First of all, it's more of a modern FPS style of gameplay, okay? You use Y to swap weapons. Grenades are now mapped to a bumper. They've completely done away with the whole D-pad switching weapons thing. So as a result, you can only carry 2 weapons. Pistols also take up that one weapon slot. And they've added new weapons. They've added stim gas. They've added a lot of other stuff. For the most part, the gameplay is like, it's fine. If you like Gears of War gameplay, you might have a little bit of a tizzy trying to get adjusted to the new controls, but for the most part, they're basically almost unchanged. And, all the classic weapons return and stuff, so yeah, I don't foresee anyone having that big of a problem with it. Now, what I do have a problem with during the story is the fact that the chapters and segments during the story are very short. And by short, I mean some of them only have like 1 or 2 gunfights, and then you just move on to the next room. And then you wait for your team to come, they give you your score, you kick down the door, you rinse and repeat. And it gets kind of repetitive. And, it's just, again, this kind of has to do with, there not being much story to really expand upon. They couldn't really do much with it. They really shortened down the story, and they kind of just whittled it down. And in some cases, I actually say that that's fine. In this case, however, where, there's an interesting backstory, and, this is the perfect opportunity to, to describe this. And, give the players some interesting dialogue and whatnot, and elaboration in the characters. They didn't really do that here, and unfortunately, I really think that's a mistake that they made with this game, and I think that unfortunately the game has to now suffer because of that. Now, soundtrack-wise, the game is pretty much Gears of War 3. graphics-wise, the game is pretty much Gears of War 3. So really, I get the feeling that this game is kind of what it should have been, was more of a downloadable campaign for Gears 3. I do not believe that this game was worth $60. Now, there are other game modes in this game, obviously, besides the campaign. There's multiplayer, and then there's, well, what is it? I forget what it's called. Overrun, which is kind of an adaptation of Horde mode. Let's start with multiplayer. Multiplayer in this game is, again, a very radical change from the other Gears of War games. Multiplayer in this game is now, instead of being, taking place on pretty big, pretty open maps where you're going to, be engaging with, gunplay with all these other people, now the maps are kind of small. They're very condensed. It's very tight, is what I should say. And again, it feels more like an FPS sort of game. They have like free-for-all, they have, all these Gears of War game modes. And, one thing that I did notice in a lot of these game modes, they've taken out down but not out, which is where you get downed and you're on the floor, you can crawl, and sometimes you can be killed on the floor. Other times, during other game modes, you can't be. They've taken that out. In a lot of games, if your gear fills up, you die, which, again, that's sort of not the Gears of War feel, in my opinion. And it feels more like I'm playing, it feels like I'm really playing Ghost Recon rather than Gears of War. They kind of took out what made Gears of War Gears of War. All but for the most part, the multiplayer is pretty much the same as it's been for a long time. There's power weapons all around the map. The only other thing to note is that since, you start out with one weapon, you can pick between, sawed off, all the different weapons from Gears, and it's just like that feels rather unnecessary, and in fact, it kind of feels like a hindrance. Like, for example, if you take a shotgun, especially a sawed off, you're not going to kill anything more than a few feet away, and you're just going to get lancered off. Vice versa, if you take a lancer, if you're in a tight corner, you might not get the chainsaw off, or you might not be able to kill someone with a shotgun that's coming at you. To make matters worse, they've also, taken out active reload. So now you just have, whenever you reload, it's just reload. And I don't know, it just doesn't feel very Gears of War-y. It just feels like, okay, here's a tacked on multiplayer that we kind of put in. And I didn't like it, to say much. I mean, I had fun, it was fun using the digger again, because I did love the digger a lot in Gears 3. That was one of my favorite weapons. I always used to enjoy, arcing it into people and having it kill on spot instead of, trying to have it actually dig through the ground, which is its special ability, and, all this other stuff. But the multiplayer just wasn't Gears 3 to me. Now, when I played Gears 3, I played that for a long time. This multiplayer, I wasn't feeling it at all. And, the fact that they also brought in sort of a Mass Effect style prize box system where for so many kills you get rewards, and basically they're like skins for your character, like, weapon skins and all this other stuff that just sort of feels like, okay, you have this lottery system, and I've never been a big fan of lottery systems in games, especially ones that give you the same item again and again. And here it's just kind of like, like the majority of this game is just kind of feels like, a cash-in. Like, yeah, they wanted to make money off of you, and what better way than try and give you what would be an interesting story, what would be interesting multiplayer, and then just watering it down and not putting as much work into it as I think they could have. I know they could do better, but some people might argue that they shouldn't. Now the final game mode, Overrun, is basically similar to Horde mode in that you're playing as COG soldiers trying to hold off an advancing army of locusts that want to basically overrun you. That's hence the name of the game mode. And you have to basically defend emergence holes, which are where the locusts erupt from. And each emergence hole is plugged in, or was it emergence hole or generators or something? I forget what it was. And you need to defend each one from locusts who are going to try and run up to it and destroy it. And you won't. And then if the latch or whatever it is gets destroyed, then you get pushed back and you have to start over a whole new wave. And you can only do this like once or twice, and then after that you're down to your generator, and if they destroy that, you lose. And now what's interesting about Overrun, which probably makes it the most unique game mode in the entire game, is that each character, each player picks a certain class, and they have a special ability. So, like, for example, Soldier has, like, ammo or whatever it is. I don't remember the class names. I'm sorry. I only played it for, like, an hour or two. Each class is, like, one class gives back ammo. Another class can build sentry turrets. Another class throws stim gas. And the final class throws recon or whatever it is. And, you know, it's interesting because you have to collaborate with your team. And, you know, you have to work together to use your abilities in conjunction with each other and make sure that you survive all 10 or however many waves of overrun there are. And again, you're gonna have to forgive me because I played this like a month or two ago. Well, not a month or two ago, but like a month ago when this game was more new. And, you know, it took me a while to finish the playthrough, but now that's finished. Yeah, now that's finished, I get to do this verdict. And unfortunately, I hate to have it come down to this, but I didn't think that this game was that great. I thought that this game was kind of lackluster. It wasn't, you know, like they put some tremendous amount of work into it. It felt like they just wanted to, you know, put out another Gears of War title, knowing people are going to pay $60 for it. And ultimately, I'm sorry, but I was not impressed at all with this game. So, what would I give Gears of War Judgment? I would probably give Gears of War Judgment a 73 out of 100. You know, it's playable. It works. It's not like this game, you know, isn't, you know, some horrible or something. But, you know, it's not. I'm not too impressed with it. So, sorry, Epic. You know, so again, it's like both these guys, both Santa Monica Studios and Epic Games, like what were you kind of like thinking when you released these games? I mean, obviously, God of War is a bit better than Gears of War 3 in my opinion, especially with that multiplayer that's interesting that I definitely liked. But it's like they could have done so much more. Like, I played Gears of War 3. I even recently played God of War 3. I thought those games were really good. And then you come to these prequel games and it's just like, you know, what is this? This is just like a cash-in. It's just like you're putting stuff out just to do it. And, you know, even Instant Retreat, who used to be MLG Gears of War 2, he said he didn't even like this game. He doesn't even really play it anymore. He said he played it for a little bit, you know, and then he said, oh, what am I, you know, I'm not playing this anymore. How Original doesn't like this game. Basically, this game is now gone. I see people on my friends list going back to Gears 3. So, you know, what kind of lasting value is there in this game? So, ultimately, would you want to buy this game? I don't know. It's very lackluster. I would say only buy it if you really found nothing else in March and nothing else in the near months that you want. But if not, you know, if there's something else, you know, coming up, then you'd probably be better off just, you know, holding your money and, you know, waiting around and seeing what happens. So that's it for this episode of what? Verdict. Oh my god, I can't believe I just forgot the name of my goddamn review series. That's it for this episode of SpraynPray1000's Verdict. I'll see you guys. Actually, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be the final verdict for quite some time. There are no games coming out until a month from now. They are releasing Resident Evil Revelations. That's going to be the first game I buy, and then after that, you know, oh wow. There's going to be a very few verdicts from now on, so it's unfortunate. But in fact, I actually do enjoy this series, you know, quite a lot. I enjoyed, you know, doing verdicts, but apparently there's no games coming out. So I'll let you guys know in channel news. So hopefully you stick around, and I'll see you guys next time. So thanks for watching. What the? Oh my God! This is the worst quickscoper ever. Fuck out my face.
How do I quickscope?
We didn't get 3 stars.
What? That doesn't look like 3 stars to you, Sean? Last enemy.
I got a ribbon as I got that execution.
You know a sniper tried to walk up behind me and quickscope me?
How do I quickscope?
There was no better time for him to say that shit. The only thing that would have been better is if he was facing the wrong way, but he wasn't. He was facing towards me. He literally walks up behind me, fires his sniper, he misses me at point blank. I should actually put that picture in the video. I didn't make it, but it's funny as hell.